Okay, so today I kind of wanted to. I had this stupid idea. Looking at the PinePhone, since it has a full Linux distro on it, that opens up a possibility of compiling disassembled ROMs on it. So first thing off, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to stream later today. I don't think so. So you're getting this instead. But we'll also see how things go in the future because I'm picking up an IRS job today, so that's kind of why. So my schedule may flip flop a bit more than it normal. But anyway, so since we're running a full Linux distro on the PinePhone and we have access to like full Linux distro repos running Arch, I decided that I'd try and compile Polished Crystal directly on the PinePhone. So I kind of tested out a couple other ROMs, Poke Crystal and Poke Red, and those compiled kind of okay, so there were some things I had to work out. So, first of all, I ran into some errors with RGB fix from the Git repo, from the Git version in the AUR. Once because I thought that would be about the only way I'd get RGBDS working to compile Game Boy Color ROMs. Well, it turns out that in the ARM repos, RGBDS is also there in the community repo. So RGB Fix ended up working just fine once I used the repo version rather than the AUR version. It does take a while to compile RGBDS, sadly, but luckily I was able to install it pretty easily otherwise once I got through that. So the next thing that I had to do was clone the polished crystal repo. So when I was doing my initial test, I was doing that via SSH into the phone, but I kind of wanted to do like the whole compilation process from the on-screen keyboard. So holding a phone is kind of tough to do, and also typing on an on-screen keyboard, but I kind of made it work out. So cloning the repo initially takes a while. Oh, on a slow connection when it's like slipping down like 100 kilobytes a second at most. It does take a while, so I ended up like stopping the recording, then continuing once it hit the end toward the verification. And then from there, I forgot that I didn't have some of the Devel tools installed. So I had to install base Devel because I'm running Arch on this. I am thinking about trying a couple other distros to try this out. I kind of want to try it out with SXMO on Postmarket OS and see how that runs. I do still have an SD card with it, so it should be simple enough to set up. But I may have to install GCC. I'd have to figure out how to wrap muscle with the GCC stuff or figure out where that stuff is or if it's already installed on it. But other than that, once the repo finally downloaded, the next part was kind of the longest part, and that was actually compiling the ROM itself. So overall, the graphics itself, to compile all the graphics, it took like, what was it, 25 minutes to do. I probably could have gotten it to work quicker if I would have enabled more cores, but I didn't. So this whole compilation process ran on one core, and it took almost a half an hour to do, most of that being graphics. All of the ASM code itself compiled rather quickly. So for those that don't know, basically what the compilation process does for Polished Crystal, which is a ROM hack. And I wanted to use Polished Crystal because it's got a lot of content packed in. So it took like 30 seconds to a minute for Poke Red and Poke Crystal to compile. But this took an insane amount of time to compile because of all the stuff that's going into it. So what happens, why the graphics took so long, is first of all, you're converting PNG files to a 2-bit image. So basically, it's a 2-bit per pixel, and that is basically a 4-color grayscale. And it's also creating a palette for that specific sprite where that is applicable. And then what it does with the 2-bit per pixel image is it also compresses it with an LZ comp script so that it's even smaller. So once all the graphics are put into the ROM, it takes up way less space, and then you can have way more content that's available to you. And what the ROM will do is actually uncompress that image into VRAM. And another thing that took a while was compiling some of the map metatile stuff, which basically it compiles the collision data and all that other data, and then that also gets compressed with LZ comp. So that's going to be uncompressed when you need it. So what this allows is for all kinds of content to be slapped into the ROM in a 2 megabyte package. And so that also allows for things like the various variant forms of Pokemon, the various whole bunch of additional maps. You've a whole bunch of it's a lot put into this little 2 megabyte Game Boy Color ROM that actually runs just fine on a Game Boy. So the next issue I ran into was the choice of emulator that I installed at first. MGBA didn't run too well. It looks like RetroArch runs okay, but I didn't feel like running it and having to like copy presets over for controllers and plugging in that whatnot. But so I ended up installing VBAM. As bad as that might be. And just so that you could kind of see the full speed rather than getting a slideshow going on. So the ROM compiles just fine. I didn't go further than that because I really didn't see any error messages other than at the start. And I'm going to assume that the ROM's just fine since it loaded up. So one of the things with the AUR Git version of RGBDS is it had an issue with RGB fix. And what this does is it basically fixes the headers of the ROM so it's correct. And for some reason, it didn't recognize had an issue with one of the characters in there. I am not quite sure what it was in the command that errored out, but it only gave me what was it? Like a missing Unicode character in there. But in the end, what this kind of shows that in its current state, you can kind of do ROM hack development on the PinePhone. I'd recommend using the convergence package to do it, so you've got more of a full desktop, but it is possible. And with the PinePhone hardware keyboard in development, it also means that might be an option that you might use if you're really want to do that on a mobile platform. But I mean, I wouldn't quite recommend it because it is still kind of chunky. You're gonna be running your battery dry just to compile a little 2 megabyte thing, and I'd highly recommend that you take advantage of more cores, kind of like they do with the Game Boy Advance compilation. But if you've got any other suggestions, scream at me on any of the chat platforms that I have linked in the description: Discord, Guilded, Matrix, that kind of whatnot. Oh, and if this is something that kind of piques your interest and you want to kind of try out, but you don't quite have the hardware, there are a lot of other options since the tool set is available on ARM, so you can try it on other platforms and I guess comment about it and how it went. So I'll see y'all in the next one.